Hello. Um, Today we're going to start the first discussion. We're going to talk about operation and supply chain and process. So operation and supply chains are in news quite frequently recently. You read about Wall Street Journal articles, and then there's always something related to inventory, supply chain disruption, oversupply of something, and then short supply of something else. And there's a port disruption and all those things. And, more or less are related to supply chain. Okay. And supply chain is basically, concerns the product from the raw material to all the way reaching the end customer. Along that line, we have all sorts of business operations to make sure that the processes are operated smoothly. So these three concepts are used quite kind of interchangeably with a slightly difference in the details. And we will talk about those in a lot more through this 8 weeks of program, okay? So every day when you start your day, probably you will grab a cup of coffee from Starbucks, and you go to yoga class and wear your Lululemon, and use your Microsoft Office suite to start your workday. And during the business meetings, you might use Zoom, and you always use Google to search for relevant information. Okay. And when you buy things, you probably use a Visa card or MasterCard. Okay. So all those products that we interact on a daily basis essentially is produced by some business. And the process of, generate the business idea and design the product and then produce the product, and then at the end, distribute the product to the end consumer. Essentially is the operation and supply chain care about, okay? So every product or service you consume has to be created, right? And that the creation process is essentially we care. So what are operation and supply chain management? Production is essentially the creation of a goods or service. And operation management is the activities that create value in the form of goods and services by transforming inputs into outputs, okay? And the supply chain is a global network of organizations and activities that supply a firm with goods and services to create a customer value. So you can tell that these three different concepts are kind of intertwined closely, right? And as an operation manager or supply chain manager, your goal is to deliver the right product at the right time, in the right quantity, and at the right location, right? Sounds, not complicated, but in practice, it's a very challenging job, as evidenced by all those, supply chain disruptions we read about in the last few years, especially during the COVID time. So operation essentially is the value-adding process in any business, converting the input into output, okay? So the input, what we're talking about, let's think about what are the inputs we can have. Essentially, it's labor and capital. Some of you say that, oh, you need a land, you need an office space, you need a plant. But all those can be converted through capital. With the investment, capital investment, and also with the labor involvement, you can purchase land, you can purchase the plant, you can build a team, all those things, right? So it's most essential inputs is that actually is just labor and then capital. And what are the outputs? The outputs are goods or service, right? It can be tangible goods or intangible service. And during this transformation process, managers and then all those personnel involved in the process will, control and provide feedback and to make sure the smooth conversion process. Okay. And the operation in today's world is experiencing a lot of change. Okay. Number one focus in the business world is that more more businesses start to focus on social, environmental, and ethical conduct. And technology has been a major kind of disruptor to the industry, and then impacts the cost of productivity and competitiveness of some of the business. Globalization continues to lift more people from poverty and bring more technology advancement. Globalization, even though recently we see some of the challenge there, still remain a main theme in the business world. And along the line with the technology advancement, we also see the increasing popularity of e-business, omni-channel practice in most of the businesses, and more companies focus on revenue management, which is essentially to increase their revenue, okay, or balance the revenue with the right cost structure. And process analysis and improvement, adding the agility in business operation. So these are kind of continue to be the theme in the business world, okay? So this is about it for for today's kind of brief introduction, and I'll read the textbook and read all those assignments and do all those discussion that assigned in this module. I'll talk to you later.